Hey, everybody. That is my impression of Pete Buttigieg doing his impersonation of Barack Obama. Hope you liked it. Uh, Welcome to StudentLoanJustice.org live stream for Monday, June 1st. My name is Alan Collins. I'm the founder of StudentLoanJustice.org. We are currently in upstate central Wisconsin, waiting maybe forever for the Democratic National Convention, which was supposed to happen in July. It's been postponed until August. There may be a conflict between the Democratic Convention and the Republican Convention. We shall see. But so you know, and I apologize for my unkempt appearance, blame it on the quarantine. So you know, welcome. If you're new, we're glad that you found us. We are the largest, oldest, really the only grassroots citizens group actually and absolutely fighting for student loan justice. We've been doing this for 15 years, folks. We've been featured top story on 60 Minutes, on Fox News, on NPR and PBS and ABC and NBC and MSNBC and CNBC and CCTV and Al Jazeera and Rolling Stone and Vice News and the New York Times and many other places. Now, you might be wondering, what is student loan injustice? And I will gladly tell you. The root of student loan injustice begins with the removal of consumer protections that exist for every other type of loan. So unlike every other type of loan in this country, student loans have been uniquely stripped of bankruptcy protections, of statutes of limitations, restricted in fair debt collection practice laws, truth in lending laws, even state usury laws have been taken away, certainly from federal student loans. This has created a predatory, hyperinflationary lending system that at this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, I am here to tell you, has failed. It has just failed. We're fighting for two things. Number one, the return of bankruptcy protections to student loans. I know that doesn't sound very sexy, but believe me, it's extremely important. The founders called for uniform bankruptcy laws, ahead of the power to declare war, ahead of the power to raise an army, ahead of the power to build a navy in the Constitution. We do not have to put up with this, folks. With the threat of bankruptcy back on our side, it's a game changer. Everything changes. Everything gets better. But as I said, folks, this is a failed lending system, which brings me to the second thing that we are fighting for now in the current coronavirus crisis, and that is the erasure, the cancellation, not fake cancellation, true cancellation of all student loans held directly by the federal government. And that's about 90% of all loans. The president can do this by executive order. He doesn't need congressional approval. He doesn't need one dime of taxpayer money. It doesn't need to be paid for, as we see with many competing proposals, which is just nonsense. And it wouldn't add one dime to the national debt. It is by far and away the easiest way to massively stimulate the economy. Unemployment checks are running out here in a couple months. And this problem will persist. The so-called student loan payment suspension will be up in 3-4 months. And if you think that many people, or maybe even any people, are going to happily resume paying their loans, well, I am here to challenge you on that. I don't think it's going to happen. I think this is a dead lending system. So our petition, which you can see the link for either above or off to the left on change.org, has got over 250,000 signatures on it now. We've been doing this for many years, and my best guess is that we probably need 1 million or more signatures to get some really good press coverage on this. And with the civil unrest going on right now, that's kind of on the shelf. But that's my best guess. And already we've gotten some good media. We've gotten coverage from Fox News Radio, Minnesota Progressive Radio, speaking of Minneapolis, C-SPAN, Status Coup, if anybody knows what that is. So we have spanned the range from liberal to conservative in the media coverage that we've gotten on this so far. But what we've gotten has just been a drop in the bucket, folks. We can do way more. And I would urge you all to do everything you can to get 10 people to sign the petition, to get some media to do a story on the petition, get the media to do a story on the two bills we're fighting for, S1414 and HR 2648, the two bills that would return bankruptcy protections to student loans. But this week, we're asking everybody to make it their mission to push as hard as they can on the Republican senators. If you have one, if you have two, push them, both of them, very hard, both, to co-sponsor S1414. Get a hold of their judiciary staffer in Washington, D.C. Call their office in Washington, D.C. Get the guy's name. Ask for his email. They'll probably give it to you. But if they don't, it turns out that the Senate email protocol is first name _ last name at the name of the senator.senate.gov. I think I'm right on that. Yeah, I am. So do that, and it will help. Two things: bankruptcy protections, legislation, and loan cancellation. And really, switch reverse, the first one is probably the most important. I would rather see student loans erased, and it is well past time to do that. Would much rather see them get gone that way, for obvious reasons, than the first way. So please help with that. Hey, Angel Toledano, thank you for all you do for us, Alan. Well, you're welcome, Angel. I'm happy to do it. And what I would say is, don't thank me with words, thank me with actions. I know it's not particularly pleasant, not sexy, not super fun, but it's really not that hard either to do those things that I just said. Push the living daylights out of our petition, call as many Republican senators as you have in your state, and maybe even more, and get them to co-sponsor S1414. That is all the thanks I need, because like you, I'm a student loan borrower, and in fact, I'm a defaulted student loan borrower. At this point, I think I wear the default as more of a badge of honor as anything, but I'm just telling you, yeah, if you want to thank me, push the needle in our favor. You know, we've got not an insignificant number of people in this group now. We're pushing 300,000 people across all of our platforms, and that's not nothing. That's enough to get a lot more done than we could even a few months ago. So, hey, Kathleen Donfield and Tracy Music are also here tonight. Good to see you all. I've got three quick announcements. Number one, our friend Tom Borgers, who's the lead congressional investigator for the SNL scandal way back in the day, but more recently for the subprime home mortgage crisis, for which he was featured top story on 60 Minutes. And he's even run banks before. He was president of the Bank of Guam. And believe it or not, he opened up one of the major trading desks at JP Morgan Chase, where he worked for like 20 or 30 years. So our friend Tom has taken an interest in Parent Plus loans. He is looking for a grammar editor, just a volunteer grammar editor, somebody who can look over his letters and his essays before he sends them out. He's going to be sending some stuff. He's going to be publishing some stuff, pretty heavy hitting stuff, I should say, in the next couple of weeks. So, and if you're a writer, you know, it's really hard to edit your own stuff. You write it and you're like, oh, it's done. And then you look it over and you spot a few things, but you can look it over a million more times and then there'll be some things that you will just never spot for some reason. It's just a mental thing. So if you have grammar editing experience, if you know how to edit, it's not that big of a deal, but it is a special skill. If you possess those unique skills, send Tom an email. He's a very good guy, very nice guy. His email address is tborgers, TBORGERS 98 at yahoo.com. He's not a Yahoo. He's a very, very good guy, very serious guy. But I have to say that. So that's first announcement. Second announcement. Okay, the third announcement is we are requiring minor donations at this point. We survive only and totally on donations from normal people. We don't do deals with bad guys. We don't have any side hustles. We don't sell our members out. We don't do any of that nonsense. 100% of all of our operating revenue comes directly from typically distressed student loan borrowers. And so it's a very austere existence, as you might imagine. But so having said that, I have to fundraise from time to time. And currently we are seeking to raise, I think it's $60 that we still need to raise to pay for some auto repair. Great job. I'm doing the work, by the way, but the parts are kind of expensive. So if you can help there, see the donation link above. Shoot, what was that second announcement? Oh, the second announcement. If you are in IBR and if you were told by your servicer that because you got a forbearance, it reset the clock on you for IBR, which should be 25 years, or if you're in the PAYE or PAYE program, it's 20 years. But if you're in any of those and your loan servicer said, oh, you went on forbearance, so the clock starts over for you, let me know. That's illegal. They can't do that. And it's looking like I'm seeing a pattern here, and I would like to know more about that. So if that's you, then please do that. Maybe one quick announcement, last announcement I'll slide in there. If you are a defaulted borrower and you filed your taxes or you filed non-filer status, whatever you needed to do to get your stimulus check, you have every reason to expect that you would get a stimulus check, and you have not gotten a stimulus check and you're a defaulted borrower. So normally you have an IRS Treasury offset on your account. Let me know. My suspicion was that after that 2-month moratorium on collection activities expired, which it did in the first week of May, then the IRS would start processing the application, the stimulus checks for defaulted borrowers after that date, and they'd be like, oh, the Treasury offset is still there, so you get nothing. Pretty sure that's happening. So if that's happening to you, let me know. I'd be really interested to hear about it. Hold on one second. My machine is just about to run out of gas here, folks. Bear with me for 2 seconds here. So tonight, I'm going to give you guys the skinny on Donald Trump and Joe Biden. This has been actually kind of a long time coming. I probably should have done this a little earlier, but I think it's important to know. For you people to know, first of all, we are a nonpartisan group. We only care about student loans, and we only talk about politicians in as much as they do anything or maybe don't do anything, say something, maybe don't say something on the student loan issue. That is it. And to that end, we've said terrible things about Donald Trump. We've said terrible things about Joe Biden. We've said terrible things about Barack Obama, on down the list. But I think it's really important that you all know where each of the candidates stands right now on the issue and what their past looks like as well. So this is going to be kind of a file dump for you all on each of those candidates. So who should I start with, Biden or Trump? Any preferences out there? Okay, well, let's start with Donald Trump because he's been in the news lately. So Donald Trump, the file on him is far smaller. Before Donald Trump announced his run for the presidency, he said some very nice things. For example, he said, why is the government profiting on student loans? That's ridiculous. That makes no sense. Of all the places the government shouldn't be profiting, you would think student loans would be it. I mean, these are our young people. This is them getting an education. There's no good reason for the government to be profiting. And, this was in response to data that we now can say in 2012, the federal government was booking $50 billion a year on the student student loan program. This is since Obama, which I'll talk about in a minute. Obama federalized the program in 2010, so the government now makes all the interest on federal student loans. And of all student loans, the government directly holds 85 or 90% of all student loans, period. So in 2012, they were profiting $50 billion a year, and Donald Trump decried this fact. Today, I think they're probably booking even more profits than that, at least up until this most recent payment suspension. So my best guess is that over the past 10 years, the federal government has been profiting 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, maybe even as much as $100 billion a year on the federal student loan program. The government loans out about $100 billion a year too. But $100+ billion in interest alone clicks off on the federal student loan portfolio. It's disgusting. And to Donald Trump's credit, he called that just before he announced his run for president. Now, a lot of people like to bring up the Trump University thing, but I'm sorry, guys, that's just not an issue for us. Trump University never used federal or even private student loans, so that's off the table for us. As president, Donald Trump has not been good on student loans. Now, I should say that the student loan problem, presidents come and go. Secretaries of education come and go. It is the unelected, unappointed bureaucrats in and around the Department of Education, this revolving door between the Department of Education and the servicers and other lending interests, the guarantors, etc., collection companies. That is really where the problem lies. But, I have to say, when Donald Trump came into office and appointed Betsy DeVos to be secretary, the first thing she did was hired for-profit college attorneys, lobbyists, who are fighting certainly against students, but also fighting for the for-profit colleges, and that was bad. She essentially gave charge of the henhouse to the fox. And I'm not just talking about for-profit colleges. I'm talking about the lending apparatus as it is. And I won't spend too much time talking about them. But these are the bad people. They wake up every day and they think, how can we screw us? And Betsy DeVos just said, here you go. My guess is that Betsy DeVos really didn't care much about student loans coming in. She cared more about charter schools, but whatever. They just gave it away to the student loan swamp, call it that. So bad on Donald Trump, but then again, it's kind of what I expected. And to his credit, he kept an arm's length away. To President Trump's credit also, the one good thing he has done as president that I can point to is automatically canceling the student loans of 100% disabled veterans. Now, that may sound like a small thing, and sorry, but I have to say it is a small thing. If you're 100% disabled, whether you're a veteran or not, you can fill out minimal paperwork and your loans will be canceled by law. That's been on the books for years. No problem there. So what Donald Trump did there was more for show than for actual go. So it's just not that impressive. Made some headlines, not that impressive. The worst thing that Donald Trump has done on student loans, and this just happened last Friday, and this really is a big deal. President Trump vetoed bipartisan legislation that veterans groups supported, by the way, that would have forced the Department of Education essentially to cancel the loans of students who were defrauded by their universities. And these are almost always, if not always, for-profit colleges. I mean, sorry guys, up until this, if you're a big Trump fan, I'm sorry, but we tell the truth, and we will never not tell the truth. And I had a couple people say they're going to leave the group earlier because I was being so hard on Trump. But dudes, I'm telling you, I tell the truth. And wait around long enough and I'll say something bad about whatever candidate you like, almost guaranteed. This is terrible that Donald Trump did this. Up to this point, he had kind of an arm's length. He's kind of a Teflon president. He was kind of inoculated from the student loan problem because he really didn't say anything big. He didn't do anything big. He didn't really weigh in one way or the other. But with this veto, that's strong. That's the president actually going out of his way to sign something to give the Department of Education even more power than it already has. And make no mistake, the Department of Education is a big government monstrosity. They are queen bee of the hornet's nest, the big government hornet's nest that is wrecking all of our lives and is threatening this country. Why would he do that? He's a Republican. Republicans are supposed to be for smaller government. And believe me, we have many conservative friends who are saying the exact same thing that we're saying, at least on student loan bankruptcy. It is just astonishing to me that Donald Trump would just so totally and thoroughly give in to the student loan swamp on this one. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. The Department of Education has no desire or intentions of canceling any student loans, even if they're forced to buy a lawsuit, which they recently were on this very same question, the Borrower Defense to Repayment Program. But I'm telling you, folks, we've been watching this Department of Education 15 years. And if they do not want to follow a regulation, if they do not want to administer a program that Congress passes, they won't. Look at the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. What percent of the people who thought they were getting their loans forgiven actually have gotten their loans forgiven? Less than 1%. How many people have had their loans canceled through what we're talking about, the defense to repayment thing? Last time I checked, 2. Not 2,000, not 2 million, 2 people out of like 225 or 240,000 people. The Department of Education is against us. They are a national threat. Why Donald Trump would cave into them is just beyond me. We've got a lot of conservative people in this group, roughly in proportion to what the nation looks like as a whole. It baffles me. I think he's distracted. I think he's got other stuff on his mind that we see on TV right now with the civil unrest and so forth. But whatever, I can't make any excuses for him. I just have to say that it was a terrible thing for the president to have to do. Now, my hope with President Trump is that, as Jimmy Carter said, he's malleable. He's not a dumb guy. He was saying most of the right things before he came into office. I think there's hope for Donald Trump. And if you hate Donald Trump, that probably grates on your ears. But Donald Trump is malleable. If we can show him how many voters we represent, and by the way, there are 55 million voters in the country who either have student loans or are co-signed on them. 80% of them will never be able to repay their loans. 80% of those people, that's 44 million people, are losing sleep over their student loans. Why we don't have at least a couple million people in our group right now, I do not know. But I can tell you it starts with word of mouth, because we don't have a big budget to advertise. In fact, we have zero budget to advertise. We don't have an army of lobbyists on our side. We don't have any of those resources. But what we do have, at least what we should have, are 44 million freaked out people in the country who we are fighting for. They need to know about us. Right now, they don't. And who can blame them? You can't fault them for it. Well, maybe you can. They should have sought us out, but whatever. We are the only group actually fighting for student loan justice, folks. I'm telling you. If you go and start volunteering with any other group, and I'm not going to name names, who say they're fighting for students, you're wasting your time and you're being used. We've looked at all of those groups. If even one of those groups were actually fighting for student loan justice, I would take this banner down and I would join them. It'd be way easier. But there just isn't. The people saying Harvard-educated, very well-funded think tanks and advocacy groups in Washington, D.C., those people say they're fighting for students. They've got their boot on our throat. And I've said that for many, many, many years. They're not fighting for us. They're fighting for their own stupid little whatever, their own institutional interests, their own professional, personal goals. I know they're not fighting for us, because if they were, I wouldn't be here. Student loan justice would not exist if they were fighting for us. Shame on them. But more than that, ignore them. They will waste all of your time, and they will never give you student loan justice at all. The loan cancellation programs we're seeing out in the air right now, they're complete bullshit. They will never work. They have to go through Congress. Congress will never pass. Whatever Congress might pass will never work. Because the Department of Education, as I said, has no desire or intentions of canceling any student loans. Only an executive order that goes right around Congress, does not require their approval, does not require any tax money. You don't have to raise $2 trillion under our plan to cancel these loans. like what you're hearing from all the other plans out there. Oh, we have to raise $2 trillion to pay for these loans. That's bullshit. Absolute nonsense. This group is it, folks. I'm telling you. Tell a friend. Tell 10 friends. The 10 people who you get to sign the petition, get them to come in and onto our group so that they can help us fight. We've got a lot of work to do, hopefully between now and the election. We could get this problem solved by November 3rd, but it begins with you. So what else is there to say about Donald Trump on student loans? Well, I would say maybe peripherally, his companies have filed for bankruptcy many, many, many times. And so Donald Trump, of all people, he knows it's critically important nature of having bankruptcy laws on the books. As any entrepreneur would be the first to agree, you've got to have risk-taking in a country if you're going to have entrepreneurship. If you're going to invent cool stuff, you've got to give people the room to try and fail. It's just the way it is. And this has been true going back to the days of Adam Smith himself, the founder of Western economic thought. So whatever you think about Donald Trump on other issues or personally, it really doesn't matter, folks. The fact of the matter is that he is it matters to you, I'm sure. It matters in many other spheres. But in as much as you care about student loans, what I just said about Donald Trump is pretty much all you need to know. The fact is that whether he's Donald Trump or Donald Duck, he is president. And only the president has the power to cancel student loans by executive order, like I just said. And personally, I think he's kind of a wild card. I think there's a shot. I don't think he's a Republican in the truest sense of the word. He used to be a Democrat. I think that he goes which way the wind blows, according to his own principles and values and so forth. I think he's a businessman. I think he prides himself on being a fair evaluator of a situation, and the most fair, dispassionate, logical, rational analysis of this federal student loan system certainly is that it has failed, and any opportunity to take it to the bathroom and drown it in the tub, as conservative Grover Norquist has said many times, that is an opportunity worth taking. I think Donald Trump might go for it. And when he sees the number of voters that are in this student loan swamp drowning, I think he may really change his mind. So again, it all comes back to that petition, folks. If we get 20 million signatures on that petition, and we can, and it starts with you, but if you help it, it will happen, then we could have this problem solved by November 3rd. So, hey, we have a comment. Sorry, Debbie. Betsy is an idiot. She hasn't given one piece of advice to teachers during this pandemic mess. You know, Betsy, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but Betsy DeVos hates teachers. It was recently revealed that her brother, Eric Prince, who is CEO or president of literally the largest mercenary group in the country, what are they called? Blackstone. People who I worked with when I was in Iraq in 2004, by the way, literally paid mercenaries. They have infiltrated the American Federation of Teachers, who had sued the Department of Education and others on its terrible administration of the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. So there's some very deep, dark, nasty things going on with Betsy DeVos. And, you know, I don't even want to go any further than I've already said, because that's outside of our universe of student loans. But yeah, Betsy DeVos sucks. I wish she would have been better, but she's been terrible. She's been as bad as could be expected and even worse. Shame on her. Shame on Donald Trump for hiring her. I think the only reason he brought her on was because her family is so rich and they give so much money to the Republicans over the years. Debbie Westmoreland Baker also says, and is that interest going to the servicers, or are they actually sending it to DOE? The interest, the $100 billion a year of interest that accrues on the student loan debt tab every year, that goes to the government. The servicers make like $5 a month processing every healthy loan. Where the servicers make their money, and I can't prove this completely, but I know that they can make tens of thousands of dollars on a defaulted loan, because remember, all of the big servicers, Nelnet, FIA, Sallie Mae, Navient, etc., Great Lakes, they all own a ton of collection companies. So they love defaulted loans, and they can make way more money, way more money, like $10,000 in a few years on a defaulted loan, rather than making $5 a month on a non-defaulted loan. So there's all kinds of tricks that the servicers play to get money out of us over and above, separate from interest. Yeah, the federal government makes all the interest right now. And you're right, Debbie, it is sick. The whole system is sick. The whole system has failed. It's time to put the sucker in the airlock chamber on the spaceship and open the hatch. It's time to jettison this son of a bitch. It's become a national threat. And by the way, I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but in 20 seconds, let me just tell you, you know who's hurt worst by student loans? And I don't want to play identity politics too much. Number one, African Americans. They are absolutely slammed. They are ravaged, destroyed by student loans, far more than the general population. They are preyed upon by the for-profit colleges that I mentioned earlier. Turn on your TV. Look at all of those ads for this college online, this college, SNHU, you name it, and I will show you black and brown people in those advertisements. I might also add that the Black Congressional Caucus is not sticking up for African-American, college-educated, student loan-holding African Americans in this country. I have seen some things over the years that just made my jaw drop, and that is just terrible. It's disgusting. African Americans are, the default rate for African Americans far higher than average. They are hurt so badly. It is a tragedy to see these, and it's not only for profits. Some of those HBCUs, I have to say, are not good. They charge way too much, and their students come out with a lot of debt. And anyways, but you know, this is the way it goes for historically, and maybe not historically, economically disadvantaged people. You know, it's terrible. It's terrible what's happening to African Americans in this country, whose only crime is getting a college education. Many, in fact, most of them wind up with student loan debt, and by far and away, most of them wind up in default. Now, come on, man. That ain't right. That just is not right. That defeats the entire purpose of the Department of Education, Office of Higher Education in the first place. It's just terrible. The second group of people who are hurt worse by student loans are females. Women. Women own 2/3 of all student loan debt. Don't know why. Well, no, it's pretty clear why. About 55, 56, 57% of all college students are females. That's why. Why they owe more as a percentage of that debt, I don't know. But it's true. So I don't know what my conclusion is there, but I think it's a pretty strong point to make. This is a black issue, absolutely, positively. And I've written articles in the past. I've marched with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I've done a lot of things. But me as a white guy, you know, I don't know if I'm really the right person to be taking on that particular that particular niche of the student loan battle. So maybe there's some other people out there, enterprising, ambitious, young, eager people who want to make a name and a career for themselves. And I can tell you, yeah, Black Lives Matter, there is no doubt. But what about black livelihoods? What about that? Take a really hard look at what the Black Congressional Caucus has done on student loans. And I will show you corruption across the board. Payouts, bribes. Oh, what do you know? This guy's nonprofit got $1 million. What do you know? This guy's scholarship fund got $500,000 from Sallie Mae. What do you know? I could go on for a while, folks, but I'm telling you, if anything beyond a solution to the police brutality problem is to come out from the current crisis, I would hope that the low-hanging fruit for economic justice for African Americans would start with the cancellation of all federally held student loans for all people, not just African Americans, but for everybody. Like I said, it's failed any system. So that's where I'm at on that. Similarly, if you care deeply about women's issues, why is there not a Me Too student loan justice subchapter? Why is there not? I don't know. There's a massive power void out in this country, folks. Those two places are just massive power vacuums, just begging to be filled. We can do it as much as we can, but I really think maybe people a little more appropriate for those particular niches should be stepping up and calling attention to that fact. So if that's you, get with me. We'll support you 100% any way we can. Okay, so I talked about Donald Trump. Now let's talk about Joe Biden. And I'll keep this fairly short for you. Joe Biden has been terrible historically on the student loan issue. As Delaware senator, he went out of his way to get bankruptcy protections removed from private student loans in 2005. After he did this, Sallie Mae relocated their corporate headquarters to Delaware. And Joe Biden and Albert Lord, the CEO of Sallie Mae, they shoulder to shoulder did a press conference on CNBC to announce the move of Sallie Mae's headquarters to Delaware. And I heard that Joe Biden plays golf on Albert Lord's private luxury. We have pictures of it, by the way. We flew a drone over it. Luxury golf course in Anne Arundel, Maryland. So Joe was a very, very weak candidate coming into this. On the campaign trail in Iowa, Joe Biden shut me down, eyeball to eyeball. I confronted him about bankruptcy, and before I could even get 5 words past bankruptcy out, oh, no, you don't need to file for bankruptcy. No, because my plan is going to forgive student loans after X number of years, forgive student loans after you pay this percentage of your, just bullshit. Joe Biden had no real plan for student loans as of February 2nd when the Iowa caucuses happened. I am very glad to report to you, however, though, that we have pushed Biden's people very hard. And we have gotten them pretty directly, actually. I speak with his campaign manager pretty frequently. We have gotten them to adopt Elizabeth Warren's bankruptcy plan for student loans, which is good. And by the way, we were the guys who got Elizabeth Warren to even put the return of bankruptcy protections on her presidential agenda in the first place. And more importantly, we convinced Elizabeth Warren to pledge that on day one as president, she would issue an executive order returning bankruptcy protections to student loans. Now, Joe Biden, to his credit, since February 2nd in Iowa, he has come out and said that he is adopting Elizabeth Warren's bankruptcy plan. But here's the thing about Joe Biden, folks. Based on everything I said to you earlier, he can't be trusted. If he goes up and says, yeah, I'm going to do bankruptcy, student loan, yeah, I'm going to do, you can't trust what he says, because everything he says in such a way is that you can construe it. You can take at least 3 different meanings out of what he says. I know Joe Biden really well at this point. I've spent hours and hours and hours on the campaign stump with him. He's way smarter than you think. I don't know, dementia, all that stuff. No. He is clever as a fox. He knows how to answer questions in a way that he doesn't pin himself down. So we need to see it in writing. And to date, Joe Biden has not echoed Elizabeth Warren's pledge that as day one, as president, she, or he, I should say, Joe Biden, will issue an executive order calling on the Department of Education and its contractors to stop opposing student loan borrowers in bankruptcy court. We have to have that from Joe Biden in order for us to trust him. And frankly, all the stuff that I just said is pre-coronavirus. Now that the economy is looking at a very steep downhill, and the fact that it is indeed a failed lending system, frankly, we need to push Joe Biden to make the pledge to do what our petition is calling for. Really? I mean, that's what we have. And I sent a message to his campaign manager today saying exactly that. So we'll see what they come back with. Time will tell. As vice president, Barack Obama said very nice things. He made some motions that were very friendly appearing. But the fact of the matter is that under Obama and Biden, nearly $1 trillion was added onto the nation's student debt tab. Yeah, they did a feasibility study to see what kind of, how realistic it would be to return bankruptcy protected student loans. And I don't even think that study was ever completed. They just announced that they were doing it, and that was it. So Barack Obama, he's got a lot of explaining to do. You know, the people who elected Barack Obama were college students and recent college graduates. How shameful that they would allow $1 trillion to be thrown our backs in the form of predatory, unconstitutional student loans. It's disgusting. And Joe Biden has got some explaining to do. Because quite frankly, I have to wonder if Joe Biden was maybe not behind a lot of the stuff that they didn't do. In the case of Joe Biden, yeah, what he's did has been bad, but it's what he hasn't done that really just gets me. You know, I could go on and on here. Maybe I'll just tell one little other quick story. So back right around, I think just after, maybe just before Occupy Wall Street, I got a Facebook message from the White House, from a lawyer at the White House. He's like, Mr. Collins, we want you to come to Washington, D.C. We want you to help us solve the student loan problem. And I said, that's great. Let's do it. My bags are packed. I'm ready to go. I can be there in 2 days. And that was the last I ever heard from them. So, you know, there is no points for halfway. You've got to either solve this problem or don't. You can't pretend to. You can't say you're going to kind of try. You know, the president has no excuse. The president, by executive order, can cancel all federal student loan debt tomorrow. And that's what has to happen, folks. I hope that over the past 40 minutes, I've enlightened you, maybe even entertained you a little bit. But more than anything, folks, I hope that you will take from this the conclusion that, oh shit, these actually are my problems. That dude I'm watching, he's obviously just a normal guy, and he obviously can't do everything. And, oh, I need to get off my ass and help this guy. And, you know, I'm trying to lead by example here, guys. I could tell you, I could talk forever and ever and ever, all the stuff, all the work, all the toil and trouble that I've gone through for this. But suffice it to say, I'm still here fighting. It's the most noble and patriotic battle that I can think of, you know, and we are the tip of the spear. We are the pioneers on this. What we do absolutely matters. In the words of John Connor, Terminator fame, you have no idea how important you are. You know, it only takes one person to convince that very first Republican senator to co-sponsor S1414. That could change everything. That could be the domino that changes everything. And you sitting there could make that happen. You could be the person that writes that very well-written submission to whitehouse.gov to the president. Maybe you write a great article. Maybe you write a great letter. Maybe you make a great phone call that gets the Trump administration saying, you know, this actually makes a lot of sense. We need to stimulate the economy. We don't want to add anything more than national debt. We don't want to raise any more taxes. The student loan program sucks. Why don't we just jettison this stupid thing, stimulate the economy, and put something a little more fair in its place that isn't such a national threat? You could be that person that makes that happen. So if there was ever a battle that you were going to actually put some effort into, forget about saving the animals and all the stuff you see on TV asking for donations, those nonprofits. most of those people are nonsense. They feed no children. A lot of them sell children, by the way, the adoption agencies. They're asking for donations, but really what they do is they go to Africa and they buy children for $5,000 and then sell them in the United States for $25,000. The ASPCA, they kill more animals than any other entity in this country by far every year. You know, I have heard that they take in $17,000 for every animal that they rescue. So whatever. All I'm saying is, of all the very worthwhile, worthy causes that you could be devoting yourself to, particularly in this current crisis, if you have more time on your hands than you normally do, is helping us fight for student loan justice. What are you doing? Your country actually needs you on this, as corny as it may sound. It's not corny. The founding fathers are on our side. You know, there are two ways to conquer and enslave a country. One is by the sword, it's true, but the other, according to John Adams, is by debt. Well, look around. Look at your own situation. Look at the tens or hundreds of millions of people to follow in our footsteps and tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that John Adams is wrong. He's not wrong. The founding fathers were not wrong, at least not on this. When they called for bankruptcy rights ahead of the power to declare war and raise an army, they were onto something. This is exactly what they wanted to avoid. They are looking down right now, probably, and saying, how did our people get so weak? How did they become so afraid of their government? That's tyranny. Only when the government is afraid of the people do we have liberty. Don't forget that. That's what we're fighting for. That's what you had better be fighting for. Time is getting short, folks. It's time to end this injustice. Throw off these chains, whether you're black or white or whatever, and let's give a slightly better world to the generations to come, shall we? Peace.